Oh, Canada. All right. So Canada is having a lot of trouble, honestly. It's a little hard to make out some of it in regards to, as I said, I'm working on an article about their current euthanasia policies. But I don't want to beat up on them. They're very often a punching bag for people who want to make an argument against socialized healthcare. But they do.
They're nice, right? I hear they're nice people there too.
That's what I've heard. Maybe
they have a reputation for being nice.
But you know, it's turning into like maybe a dystopian Ned Flanders kind of nice now.
Like Mars is Heaven. You ever listen to that radio play, Mars is Heaven? Oh, it's amazing. You guys have to check that out.
Mars is Heaven. All right.
It's a space crew. They land on Mars and they start running into all of their dead loved ones, and they think that Mars is heaven. They think they've crossed the portal into heaven. And turns out the dead loved ones of the space crew are alien shapeshifters who lured them into a trap, to let their guards down, and they kill them all at the end. It's really effective. It's a radio play. You could watch. You could hear it on YouTube. It's amazing. You would like it a lot. It's like a Twilight Zone. It might have even been a Twilight Zone. I don't think it was officially a Twilight Zone, but it was one of those.
It reminded me of the To Serve Man episode when you described it.
Yeah, it's kind of that similar kind of twist. But the way they produced it with the voice acting and stuff was really good. It's only like 20 minutes. You should all check that out.
All right.
Anyway, that was probably off topic.
All right. So what are they giving us? 10% on the revenue?
Yeah, it might even be public domain. I mean, it's old. You're talking about from a long time ago.
All right. So housing crisis, packed hospitals and food lines, even in Canada. Even in Canada. You ever see Meaning of Life, where you have all the British fighting in Africa? A tiger in Africa. Canada has long prided itself on its social programs meant to reduce poverty and equalize access to what are seen as core rights like healthcare, education, food, and shelter. It spends hundreds of billions of dollars a year on social safety supports that are a major reason millions of people want to move to the northern nation. But key parts of its safety net are fraying, in some cases badly. In 2013, Canada ranked 13th out of 170 countries in meeting the basic needs of citizens, according to data tracked by Social Progress Imperative. By 2023, it had fallen to 39th, in large part because of a lack of affordable housing. Looking back 50 years ago, Canada had a relatively robust social safety net, reads a 2023 report from Food Banks Canada on rising food insecurity. But spending cuts in the 1980s and 1990s, along with a move to put more responsibility for economic and social well-being on the shoulders of individuals, caused low-income Canadians to fall further behind, the report says. Quote, today we are left with a social safety net that is filled with holes and that allows millions of people in Canada to fall through it. Meanwhile, more and more people are coming. Canada is growing faster than any other group of 7 nation, China or India, thanks to welcoming immigration policies intended to be a solution to falling birth rates. Now, that surprises me. I've always been under the impression it's very hard to immigrate to Canada because of their social services. Maybe they changed it. As longtime residents and newcomers alike struggle to meet their basic needs, there are growing worries about nascent anti-immigration sentiment. Serious global headwinds, including years of elevated inflation and a spreading opioid crisis, are also gaining strength, in some cases exacerbated by other factors that make the country unique: its long undefended border with the U.S. and its low population density, which can drive up federal government costs to deliver basic needs. So if you look at the population density, there's like nobody up there, right? And we're actually pretty sparsely populated ourselves. I'm a little surprised at that.
Yeah, we have a lot of space in this country. We could probably fit a few different Israels in Kansas alone. Should bring them over here.
Well, did you see that? I posted that meme.
Yeah.
That Yeah. Israel should
Well,
be
I believe Canada is the second largest country in the world in terms of land
In
area,
terms
because
of
most
land
of it is
area.
uninhabitable. I mean, it's
right.
so far.
It's frozen and mountainous.
Yeah.
Only Wolverine can live up there. The net result runs counter to the country's long-standing vision of itself as a rich nation with a robust system of social supports that celebrates diversity and has historically relied on immigration as a pillar of economic growth. Although prone to exaggeration, it's an ideal that has nonetheless long been part of Canada's international brand, especially in comparison with the U.S. In global terms, Canada still stacks up well, and its decentralized system of government means no one entity is to blame for its failings. Catherine Koplinskis, press secretary for Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, called the notion that the country's safety net is faltering outrageous. I will meet you with pistols at dawn, sir. Whether or not you support the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau government, what is not up for debate is that this federal government has massively expanded and enhanced the social safety net. I guess she's including the euthanasia program. She said in a statement, citing a drop in the poverty rate from 14.7%, 0.5% when the Conservative Party was last in power in Ottawa to 7.4%, with 2.3 million Canadians lifted out of poverty. Toronto is at the epicenter of the country's housing crisis, where scarce supply, coupled with a population boom, have led to a massive run-up in prices. Canada's largest city is also the country's financial center, home to billionaire grocers, the country's wealthiest bankers, and celebrities including Drake. Who knew? Making the contrast between haves and have-nots particularly stark. In the past decade, the number of people sleeping in emergency shelters in the city of Toronto has more than doubled to more than 9,000 people a night in 2023. Those numbers don't capture those who are sleeping rough in parks or on city streets. In 2023, the number of rental units considered affordable to families with the lowest incomes was statistically zero in Vancouver, Ottawa, and Toronto, according to a recent report by Canada's National Housing Agency. An adult working 40 hours a week for minimum wage earns roughly 30,000 Canadian dollars before taxes. Last year, the average annual... Hey, look up the exchange rate, Keaton.
That's about 22.5 here.
About 22.5?
I think in terms of US dollars,
it's trading about 75 cents. Last year, the average...
I only know that because of our super chats. Because I calculate...
There you go.
Exactly.
There you go.
So
these Canadians are stiffing us, man. They're stiffing us.
Well, yeah.
They gotta add 25% to the super chat for us to read it from now on.
Right.
Last year, the average annual rent for a 2-bedroom purpose-built apartment in Toronto, assuming you could find one, was $23,280. So as a New Yorker, all right, so that's
about $1,500, right?
Well, no, that's like $2,000. It's almost $2,000. It's almost $24,000.
Well, annual rent would be $1,800, right?
About 19.
So what is that?
It's about 19. About 1,900 a month, I'm saying. Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So 19. All right. I mean, yeah. Like, that's expensive. I live in Manhattan.
Well, in terms
so
of US
my
dollars,
whole
I'm
perspective is warped.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. If you were living there on dollars, the rent would be not bad. Actually. About 15. So maybe I should move to Toronto.
Yeah.
This article is talking me into it. I'm kidding. To rent a similarly sized condo cost an average
move to Toronto and kill myself. Exactly. Legally. Yeah.
Average of $34,344. And that's for a condo. As for buying a home, that's become increasingly out of reach for all but the wealthiest city residents, as the average cost, including for condos, was more than $1 million last year. Now that is expensive. So yeah, you know, we don't think of Canada this way. I went last year up to Buffalo, and I was struck because I did a bike ride up to Niagara Falls. So I crossed over the bridge and rode all through Canada. And, you know, you're on the Buffalo side and it's just crumbling, deindustrialized old factories, abandoned grain mills. And you go across to Canada, everything is very tended to. Everything's very neat. Everything's very orderly. The roads are well surfaced. So I was a little surprised to read that they're having this much problem. It takes a while for, you know, crumbling social services and investment in infrastructure to really show itself. So it sounds like this is a problem that's been growing in relatively recent times. Keaton?
Yeah, I mean, the problems of neoliberalism kind of transcend national borders, especially, I mean, Canada's model is different from ours in many ways. Like we have problems here that they don't. Like we have medical bankruptcies, whereas they don't. But
Right.
in terms of like overall cost of living, once you bake
Right.
healthcare costs or lack of healthcare costs into the cake up there, yeah, there's still the issue of housing. I mean, this is something that's going on all over the world. And I haven't been to Toronto in a long time. I was in Toronto last in 2006, so it's been quite a while. And I remember Toronto being a beautiful city.
I was last in Toronto in like 1999.
Oh, okay. All right. So I was a bit after you. But I remember it being a beautiful city, very well tended to. But I do remember seeing a lot of people sleeping out on the sidewalk there.
Even then?
And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And that was then, right? And so, yeah, look, I think these problems do kind of transcend borders. I mean, Trudeau is neoliberal, you know, and those same issues of housing seem to be occurring there as would occur in major cities here.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I didn't think they needed to import labor that way, that they needed to bring people in. But it's a little surprising that their wages are that low. When I was just in England, people were talking about, it's very similar. When I was just in England, people were talking to me about how expensive the rents were. And so I asked them, well, how much are the rents? And just like with this, as a New Yorker, my reaction is like, I mean, that's not bad, but look at the wages. So I was talking to my daughter, you know, she lives in England, and she said like average wages are about like that, like 25,000, 30,000 pounds. That's hard to find a job for much more than that. So
Right.
yeah, if the rent is 2,000 pounds a month, you're screwed.
Oh yeah, I mean, you still they still look. People with money and with capital will always try and squeeze every dollar they can out of people who are in a more vulnerable spot than they are. I think the key difference between European countries and ours, or Canada and ours, is that, you know, there are just certain problems here that people in these other countries have never heard of.
Right.
Like, what do you mean you pay money at a pharmacy? What is that?
Right. There is that.
Like,
There is that.
Like, yeah, we just find ways to screw our own people in ways that people around the world don't even know about.
Right. But in the end, I mean, you got to live someplace. But we are having that problem here as well, as we saw from the previous story about multi-generational housing. So that's kind of, you're double screwed. You have no health care and you have to live with your parents until you're 70.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know what like the retirement home situation is like over there, how much multi-generational housing factors into old age planning. But I would imagine it's got to be a much better setup than here, where literally, as your friend said, what's the point of saving money? You know, they're just going to take it all.
They're going to take it. Exactly. And, you know, I mean, you don't have to wait until you get old. I mean, with all the medical bankruptcies, you know, you get cancer, even with insurance. Insane. That could be everything you worked for your entire life.
Hey, there's still tickets available in Stockholm, Oslo, Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Cortland, New York, Oakmont, Pennsylvania, El Paso, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Edmonton, Alberta, Vancouver, British Columbia, Denver, Ashland, Virginia, and Athens, Georgia. See you there.